Imagine stepping onto a luxurious first-class flight, ready to indulge in the comforts of the elite. Fine champagne, gourmet meals, and a serene atmosphere. Now, imagine finding yourself seated next to Sylvester Stallone, a Hollywood legend known for his grit and charm. But what if the peace of this exclusive experience was shattered by an arrogant passenger? Stay with us, because what happens next will both shock and inspire you. Before we continue, I have a small request for you. If you are interested in this story, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch videos without subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything, but it makes a big difference for us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you very much. Now let's go back to the video. Sylvester Stallone, or Sly, as the world knows him, was no stranger to fame. Yet he was someone who cherished quiet moments away from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. On this particular day, he boarded the transatlantic flight wearing an unassuming hoodie, jeans, and sunglasses. It was clear he wasn't there to make a statement. He just wanted to enjoy the journey. The first-class cabin was a picture of elegance. The soft hum of conversations blended with the clinking of crystal glasses. Flight attendants gracefully moved between seats, catering to every need. Sly took his window seat, greeted the staff with his signature warm smile, and opened a well-worn book. To him, this flight was just another opportunity to relax and recharge. But the serenity didn't last long. A man entered the cabin, his presence almost commanding attention, but not in a good way. He appeared to be in his late 40s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit and an air of arrogance. His loud, dismissive tone toward the flight crew quickly drew sideways glances from other passengers. As he approached his seat next to Stallone, he froze for a moment, recognizing the man who sat beside him. Instead of awe or courtesy, his face twisted into a smirk. "Well, isn't this something?" he muttered, loud enough for the surrounding passengers to hear. "Stuck next to Rocky Balboa. What a treat." Stallone didn't flinch. Years in the spotlight had given him a thick skin. He kept his focus on his book, hoping the man would lose interest. But the passenger wasn't done. As he placed his briefcase in the overhead compartment, he leaned down, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "So, tell me, are you writing the next Rambo movie, or are you brainstorming another tired boxing comeback?" A ripple of discomfort spread through the cabin. People exchanged nervous glances, unsure of whether they should intervene or stay silent. Stallone looked up briefly, his face calm but his eyes sharp. "Just here for the flight," he said simply, his tone polite but firm. The man laughed, his voice carrying through the cabin. "Of course. Must be nice to spend your millions playing pretend while the rest of us do the real work." The tension in the room was palpable now. Some passengers tried to focus on their meals or entertainment systems, but most were silently watching, waiting to see how Stallone would respond. Sly, however, remained unshaken. He gently closed his book, set it on the tray table, and turned toward the man. "You seem to have a lot to say about me," he said, his tone steady. "But I've learned over the years that insults often say more about the person throwing them than the person receiving them." The man's smirk faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. "Oh, come on," he sneered. "Don't play the philosopher with me. You're just another celebrity who got lucky. People like me have to earn what we have. I bet you wouldn't last a day in the real world." Stallone leaned back in his seat, his expression unreadable. He wasn't going to let the man's words provoke him. Instead, he offered a small, knowing smile. "You might be surprised what I've been through," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "But I've learned to choose my battles wisely. And this isn't one of them." The man scoffed, but it was clear his words weren't landing the way he'd hoped. Some passengers subtly shook their heads, clearly unimpressed with his behavior. One woman, seated across the aisle, whispered to her companion, "Can you believe this guy? Picking a fight with Stallone of all people?" The flight attendants, ever professional, tried to diffuse the tension by offering drinks and snacks. But the man wasn't finished. "You know," he said, leaning closer to Stallone, "I bet you don't even write your own scripts. Just another Hollywood puppet cashing in on other people's hard work." Stallone didn't respond immediately. He simply looked out the window, the faintest hint of a smile playing on his lips. He had encountered men like this before. People who mistook kindness for weakness, who saw humility as an invitation to attack. He wasn't angry. If anything, he felt a quiet pity for the man sitting next to him. The other passengers, however, weren't so composed. Whispers turned into murmurs, and a few people openly glared at the man, clearly disapproving of his behavior. A middle-aged man seated 2 rows ahead turned around and muttered, "What's his problem?" And then, something unexpected happened. A young boy, no older than 10, walked up the aisle with his father. The boy's eyes widened when he saw Stallone, and without hesitation he blurted out, "Are you Rocky?" Stallone's face lit up with a genuine smile. "I sure am," he said warmly. The boy beamed. "You're my favorite. My dad and I watch your movies all the time." Stallone leaned down slightly, shaking the boy's hand. "Thank you, champ. That means a lot to me." The man in the suit watched the exchange, his smirk replaced by a flicker of discomfort. He shifted in his seat, suddenly aware of the growing disapproval around him. The boy's father nodded at Stallone, his expression grateful. "Thank you for being such an inspiration," he said. "You've taught my son a lot about hard work and perseverance." As the boy and his father returned to their seats, the mood in the cabin shifted. The passengers, once tense and uneasy, now seemed united in quiet admiration for Stallone. The man in the suit, however, sat in silence, his earlier bravado fading. But this was only the beginning. What happened next would leave everyone on the plane, including Stallone, speechless. The atmosphere on the plane had shifted dramatically. Stallone's kind and genuine response to the young fan had warmed the hearts of many passengers, diffusing some of the earlier tension. Yet the arrogant man remained seated, his expression sour, clearly uncomfortable with the change in the air. But he wasn't done speaking. "Sure, it's easy to play the hero for kids," he muttered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "But in the real world, it's about doing real work, not showing off." Stallone turned his head slightly toward the man, offering nothing more than a calm, knowing smile. That simple gesture was disarming, like holding a mirror up to the man's hostility. Stallone didn't need to argue or defend himself. His silence spoke volumes. At that moment, a flight attendant walked to the front of the cabin with a small microphone in hand. She cleared her throat and smiled warmly as she addressed the passengers. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, "we just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge someone very special on this flight today." The passengers murmured in curiosity, many already guessing who she meant. Stallone looked surprised, shaking his head slightly as if to say, "Please don't." But the attendant continued. "We are honored to have Sylvester Stallone on board, a man who has inspired millions through his work on screen, but more importantly through his actions off-screen." She paused for effect, her smile widening. "In fact, there's a story I'd like to share." Stallone shifted in his seat, clearly caught off guard by the attention. The cabin was utterly silent now, every passenger hanging on the attendant's words. "Several years ago," she began, "Mr. Stallone met a young man who was going through a tough time, family struggles, financial problems, and a deep sense of hopelessness. Stallone spent just a few minutes talking to him, offering encouragement and advice. Do you know what that young man is doing today?" She paused, letting the question linger. "He's a doctor now, saving lives." A wave of quiet astonishment swept through the cabin. All eyes turned briefly to Stallone, then back to the attendant. The arrogant man's face fell, his smug expression replaced by one of discomfort. He shifted awkwardly in his seat as if trying to shrink from the weight of the story. The flight attendant concluded with a poignant remark. "True heroism isn't about power or fame. It's about using what you have to lift others up." The man sat in stunned silence. After a moment, he turned to Stallone and said quietly, "I think I misjudged you." His voice, once full of bravado, was now laced with humility. Stallone looked at him with that same warm, unshakable smile. "We all misjudge sometimes," he said gently. "The important thing is what we do after." As the plane began its descent, the mood on board was entirely transformed. What had started as a tense confrontation had turned into a lesson in humility and kindness that everyone on the flight would carry with them. Little did Stallone know, the encounter wasn't just affecting those in the cabin. A passenger had captured the moment on their phone, and by the time the flight landed, the story was already spreading online. Sylvester Stallone, once again, proved that being a hero isn't just about what you do on screen. It's about how you treat people when no one's watching. Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.